been enforcing social distancing friendly for many years now.
All right, everybody. So good evening. It's so nice to see everyone. All right, we see you, Eliza. We see you, Howard. Howard, nice cap over there. Look at you.
I like it, huh?
I like it a lot.
Hmm.
Okay. It is wonderful to see everyone here. Okay, and we are live now on Facebook as well. And we'll begin in 10 seconds. Okay, there we go. Okay. You hear me okay?
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah.
Everyone hear me okay? Aaron, you hear me okay? Okay. Oh, hello.
You know what I want.
Okay, Aaron, you hear me?
There we go.
Oh, my pen.
Aaron, you need to log out and log back in again. I had that same problem earlier.
All right. All right, let's begin. You're not hearing anything. Oh. Yeah, sometimes if you just go out and come back in, torchzoom.com, it should go clearly. Okay, there we go. Okay, everybody, good evening. Good Monday evening to everyone. It's so wonderful to see everyone on this beautiful Monday evening. I'm sure none of you spent too much time outside. Sadly, that's the reality of our existence today. But what we do have is a wonderful opportunity to learn together tonight. And I'm really, really excited. If you have this magnificent book of Mesilat Yesharim, we're on page 207. And we'll be, last week, if you remember, we were talking about how careful we need to be about hurtful speech and not to hurt someone's feelings with our words. Today, we're going to talk about cleanliness in giving good advice. And just before we begin, I just want to do a quick check-in with everyone and ensure that everyone's doing okay. Jordan, you doing okay?
I'm all good. Thank
All
you.
good, your family?
Everyone's healthy so far.
That's great. They should
So-
continue to be in good health.
Thank you,
for
Rabbi.
many years.
Thank you,
Ed.
Rabbi.
Ed, how are you doing? Everyone okay?
I'm
up
doing
in the
great for
Woodlands?
an old guy. Whole family's
Everyone doing okay in the Woodlands?
Everything's good, yeah.
Excellent. How are the Colemans?
Wonderful.
Excellent. Terrific. How are the Marvins?
Great.
Excellent.
Terrific.
How are the Wenders? I can't hear you. You're on mute.
We're doing great.
Oh, terrific. Terrific.
I've got my my buddy. We're
I
listening.
see. We have Oliver.
Oliver.
Excellent.
Oliver.
And how are the Gorish family doing? I feel bad. I really, when this whole thing broke out, I'm like, but it can't happen like this in Europe because you're on your trip. You're about to go.
Well, if things had been different, I'd be on a flight back from London right now after my cruise down the Nile. But unfortunately,
Wow.
I'm here in my house, and if you saw my I've done some dishes. I'm working on it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
So
Terry, I was fixing to take a cruise down the aisle, down the Nile next week.
yeah,
Oh,
I
look
know.
at that.
So no, my housekeeper came. We koshered the kitchen. I'm washing dishes, and my
Wow.
daughter's in Montreal with graduation. To be advised. So I don't.
All right. So, but I feel your pain. I feel your pain that you're not traveling the world,
Yeah.
and hopefully soon you'll have the opportunity to do that in good health.
Please, God willing. We have one Kotler who has the virus.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well, which
One
one?
of David's rabbi sons who had to go pick up his child in a yeshiva in New Jersey, and he came back sick.
Oh no.
What's his name?
His name is Earl Kotler.
Do you know his Hebrew name?
Not offhand.
If you can get a hold of the name so that I can
Okay.
daven for him for his speedy recovery, and
Thank you.
you can text it to me anytime. So I'll add him to my prayers. Howard, how are you doing?
Great. No complaints.
Terrific.
Except
Excellent.
my picture is frozen, as always.
That's okay. How are the kiters doing?
Okay.
How are the kiters doing? Aaron?
He's muted. No, he's not.
Yeah, we're having a hard time hearing you. I'm sorry. Hi, Ashley. How are you? Okay. I don't hear you, but hopefully you'll be able to hear us. Hey, Scott, we're just doing a check-in. How's everyone feeling?
Thank God.
Terrific.
I'm
Excellent.
great.
All right, so we're on page 207, and we're talking now about the Ramchal is going into teaching us about how to have cleanliness with giving good advice. Okay, and the Ramchal begins as follows: B'inyan nitinat ha'etzah, regarding the giving of advice, shaninu b'torat kohanim, we have learned in Torah Kohanim, which is the midrash on Vayikra, on the book of Leviticus. It says as follows: when the Torah states, and you shall not place a stumbling block before the blind, to what does this refer? Now, we're familiar with that verse, right? You shall not put a stumbling block before one who is blind, right? What is it talking about? So he says, Lifnei suma badavar, to placing a stumbling block before one who is blind regarding any matter that is under discussion. Amar lacha, bas ploni ma'ili kahuna. For example, if someone asks her permissibility to marry a kohen, al tomar lo kshera vihi eina ela psula, do not tell him she is permissible when in fact she is prohibited, right? Or if someone seeks your advice, do not give advice that is inappropriate for him, but is advantageous for yourself. So I'll give you an example. Someone comes to you and says, "Hey, Dave, I need some advice. Should I invest in this company? I heard that I heard that they have great. Their outlook is bright, and it's a good investment." And you say, I don't trust those guys. Stay away from them, right? Meanwhile, you go and take that information, you invest in that company, right? And right, so you tell him it's not good for him, but you use it for yourself, right? And this is one of the examples that the Ramchal gives over here, where it's beneficial for them, and you're instead using that information for yourself instead of being honest and telling them that it really is good. And for example, do not advise a person, sell your field and buy yourself a donkey instead with the proceeds. When you are actually manipulating him and will use the opportunity to acquire the field from him. So, someone has a house, you say, just get rid of it. The market's going down. You just want to get rid of it now, right? And meanwhile, you're going to go and you're going to buy it, right? So that is another example of bad advice that you're giving to someone. That's not, again, it's not what's in their best interest, but rather what's in your best interest. Shema tomer eitze yafe ani nosen lo, lest you claim I am really giving him sound advice. Aryeh adavar Mussar lalev. You should know that this matter is in the domain of the heart, and Hashem is fully aware of your true intentions. Because even if someone might confront you and say, "Hey, how come you're giving him bad advice?" So what are you talking about? I gave him good advice, right? You look on the paper, it shows that it's pretty decent advice. But Hashem knows what's the intention of the heart. And that's what Ramchal is warning us here, is that we need to ensure that our actions are pure and clean in action and in intention. Because right at the end of that verse, of that very verse, it says, "And you shall fear your God." Why? Because when you give bad advice, nobody else knows that your intention was evil except for God. And that's why the Torah says, specifically when it comes to do not put a stumbling block before the blind, it's not only referring to the physically blind. Everybody understands you don't put a rock in front of someone who's physically blind. But what's if someone is situationally blind? Regarding this situation, they're blind. They don't know right from wrong. They don't know. I'll give you another example. You know that someone is dishonest in business, and they ask you, someone asks you about them, should I do business with them? And you give them bad advice, right? You can always fall back on the excuse of like, well, I didn't know. God knows if you knew or you didn't. God is the only one who knows. Should I take a job there? Should I not take a job there? Right? And meanwhile, you know, it's a terrible experience, but you're competing with them for a different job. So now you take that terrible job that they have no idea how terrible it is. You do. And now you get the job because you have no more competition. So all of these different examples are what Ramchal is warning us about, that, you know what, the human eye might not be able to discern what the true intention was. But the Almighty, who's Bochen Klayot Valev, but the Almighty, who he understands and he sees the intentions of the heart, the Almighty knows what the intention was. And that's why the verse specifically tells us, be careful, because Hashem is the one who knows what your true intentions were. Okay. We can thus learn from these two examples, for whether the advice concerns a matter of which the advisor could have a personal interest, such as the case where one wants to buy a field, or the advice concerning a matter to which the advisor has no potential interest in at all. And that was the first example that we really didn't explain enough, but that's referring to a Kohen. A Kohen is only allowed to marry a woman who has not been with another man. So if a Kohen asks, saying, can I marry this and this woman? And you know that she is not able to be married to him because she's been with another man, and you give him the bad advice, you say, oh, it's no problem, she's fine, right? So you have no real interest in that, because to you, who perhaps is not a Kohen, you can marry anyone, right? You can marry, technically speaking, right? Chayav adam lahamid es haba lihisyayit bo ala emes hazach vehabor. A person is obligated to always put the one seeking his advice on the track of the pure and clear truth. Okay? It's very important to remember this, that it is whether or not a person could have a side benefit or not, it's irrelevant. A person has to always give advice that's truthful and pure, clear and pure truth. And not one which is relevant to one's own, what we call in Hebrew, nigiot. Nigiot is my own personal prejudice, right? I have you ask me, I'll give you an example of prejudice. So someone asks you about a family member of yours. What can you tell me about them, right? So I don't know many people who would say bad things about their brother or their sister or their parent or their own child. And they give advice. You should do business with them. They're great people, great. And you know that they're really not so honest, perhaps, right? At least in public. So here you're giving them bad advice. You have to think. Even if you know that someone is dishonest, you can't give them advice to do business with them, but you certainly can't lie about it. So there's a whole section of the book of the Chafetz Chaim which deals with how to talk about such matters. But just to give you a clue into this, so we discussed this several times in the past. It comes up very frequently when you talk about shidduchim. Shidduchim is someone who's trying to get married, and he suggested an idea of a specific girl, or a girl has suggested a specific boy, and they call you and they ask you, well, how would you recommend I go forward? Do you think, how do you know about the family? What do you know about the specific individual? And you might know information which is not so favorable, which may not be the greatest piece of information. Do you have to share it or not? The same is with the business, right? So the answer is like this. You have to share it, but the way in which you share it may be a biblical prohibition. All right, so you have to be very careful about what you say and how you say, and how much you say. Because just because you know something doesn't mean that you have to murder the person with words. Right? Just because you know something doesn't mean that they have to be completely destroyed and that, you know, put up signs all around town that this person is a right. So there has to be a level of sensitivity even when you're dealing with truthful facts. Okay, Ed, I see you have a question.
Yeah, I raised my hand a while ago. You said a Kohen can't marry a woman who's been with another man. What if that woman had been widowed or divorced?
So widowed is different. Divorced, it disqualifies, right? Divorce does disqualify from a Kohen, but there are. Look, I officiated a wedding. This is on Facebook here, so it's probably not the right platform for this discussion. But I officiated a wedding actually for a Kohen. I found out 3 days before the wedding that I was officiating, and I had to travel to Israel for this. And then I had found out that the Chatan, the groom, was a Kohen, and I had to. It was a little bit of an interesting turn of events of how I had to find out certain information from the bride, and it turns out that even though she was with another man, I was able to do that wedding. But there's certain conditions. I don't want to get into the details of it. Scott, you had a question.
Yeah, when you were talking about, I suppose as Lashon Hara, speaking truth, when somebody's asking opinion and so forth, where does perspective come into the discussion here? And what I mean by that is, if there's someone who has a deep disdain for somebody else, and they talk about and somebody asks a question, or they start being proactive in speaking about that person, about something that in theory is maybe, you know, there may be some truth to it or be factual, but in reality, the average person, common sense would dictate that this is completely harmless and this is no good. But someone's perspective with a vendetta, with you know, so in other words, they're speaking potentially a truth, but the truth which they're speaking potentially manipulated for own, you know, personal purposes or whatever. And you know, where does perspective come in with regard to kind of speaking truth and
Okay, so, right. So
people.
The thing is like this, you know, particularly regarding shidduchim, when people call and ask about another family, they ask about the potential suggestion of someone you should go out with on a date. These are things which are very important, and it's very important to get accurate information. So what does someone do if they get information, or if they have information? They're asked about a family, and they know the family has specific issues. Are they allowed to say or not allowed to say, like you're asking, right? Right? Or if you're saying they're subjective, the person, I have a beef with them, so because you have a beef, so we have to, the asker, the person who asks the question needs to be very careful, and the person giving information needs to be very careful. I would say,
and what about someone who chooses to volunteer?
What's that?
Or somebody who chooses to volunteer and come forward with what they think is harmful truth, even though, again, it comes down to perspective and it's really nothing.
Right. So like this. So you have to always ask in a way that is fruitful, right? And it's important to understand this as the asker of the information, a person seeking the information, that the person you may be asking may not understand the importance of lashon hara and the danger of it, and therefore it's critically important to always introduce the question as follows. Look, I'm considering going out with this person. I'm doing some research, and I would like to know what objective information you can give me. Okay, I don't want to know about your own personal issues that you may have had because of certain things. What objective information can you give me that's now for them to say, oh, I hate those people, they're terrible people, that's not objective information. That right? But you can ask specifics, or I would say the best question to always ask, the best question, which doesn't fall into the category of Lashon Hara, is if this was suggested for your daughter or for your son, would you recommend that they go out with it? And that is a personal opinion on whether or not to go out, not on the specifics. That is not Lashon Hara for someone to say no. You understand? Got it? All right, Dan, you had a question.
Yeah, you may have just addressed that, but I was showing Shauna how to ask a question. But anyway, it's sort of in addition to that. So let's say someone volunteers, tells you Lashon Hara about someone. You didn't ask for it, and you say, you act like I don't want to hear that. But that's in the back of your mind. You didn't substantiate it being true or not, and it's something unfavorable about the family and the situation of a potential marriage. Since you didn't substantiate it, do you not say anything, or do you? But you can't pass along that information. What do you do?
Okay, so as a general principle, you're not allowed to believe information that's negative about another person. Okay. You're not allowed to believe it unless it is, again, even when it's verified, you don't know all the details. Okay. I just had a story yesterday where I suspected something about someone, and today I did a little bit of I had a little conversation with that person. It came out that I was totally wrong on my suspicion. Good, I didn't act on it. I was totally wrong on my suspicion. Now I can go around and put a bad name about someone on something which seems to me like verified information, but it isn't. You understand? So it's very dangerous to just say, oh, well, I know David. David only says the truth. David would never tell me anything that's not honest. He would never tell me anything that's not truthful. And then what happens is it's not verified and it's not substantiated. And I could be running around town telling people, oh, did you hear this or that about so-and-so? And that would be a very, very big challenge because once you take those feathers out of the bag, it's very hard to collect them and bring them back in, right? Once you take those feathers, and that's what it is saying Lashon Hara about someone, saying negative things about someone is like opening up a down pillow and spreading those feathers out onto the street and then trying to collect them and put them back into the bag. It's virtually impossible. And that's why our sages say, before you cut it open and before you start spreading those feathers, make sure that you have accurate information and that it's necessary to repeat that information. Because the fact that you had a negative work experience with someone doesn't mean they're an evil person. It means that maybe it just didn't jive for you. Okay. And that for someone else, it could be a perfectly great experience. Right? Think of it like this. There are many people out there who have been fired from jobs. And other people come into that same exact job, the same exact position, and love it. The person who was fired hated it, or it was working, right? And then the next person loves it. So you see that many times it's the individual that it doesn't work for them.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Shauna, you have a question? Shauna, you want to unmute yourself? Yeah. No question?
Oh, no, I didn't. I was asking him in case I had a question on how to
Okay, I just wanted to cover my bases.
No, you're good. I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions? Uncle Lenny, happy birthday to your Rebbitzin.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind wishes. Very nice. Lovely. I always have questions for you.
Okay.
Let me ask you.
On this topic.
On this topic, yes.
Okay, please.
A husband and wife in private are talking to each other. For instance, as an example, they come home from shul, Shabbat services, and one says to the other, did you see did you see the dress that girl was wearing? And it could be somebody, probably somebody that you actually knew, or even if you didn't know, but especially if you know the person and you know the family, and you say to each other, oh, you know, what a shanda to go in shul, and the dress is so far above her knees, it's terrible. Now, and you sit and you go back and forth, just husband and wife, and it goes no further. What's the ruling on that? Are we guilty?
Well, you're not guilty, but typically, if a couple were to talk about other people, it's no different than two total strangers talking about. Now, it depends like this. If it came up as a suggestion for your darling son, right, and you think that it's not a modest idea, right? So what you can say, you know what, it's just not for us, and then you don't need to say there might be some modesty issues, okay? That's something that you can, but to talk about the specific, there's no benefit that comes out of it, right? It's just talking about people, and talking about people is not a favorable thing in the eyes of our Torah.
I know, but I'm saying, remember, this is just between
That's why,
husband and
if
wife.
you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we recorded here by the Ramchal that even the conversation of the idle chatter of a husband and wife are recorded. The idea is that we're not immune to the rules of the Torah just because we're married. Right? The rules of the Torah still apply, particularly the rules of Lashon Hara still apply, even with a husband and wife.
Okay, gotcha.
But I think Scott wants to unmute his thing. Is ask what's her name? What's her name? Okay, we'll continue. I'm just messing with him.
Actually, can I ask a question?
Sure.
What if it's like just your thought?
So
A negative thought.
Look, speech is different than thought, and thought, it's not yet a crime. Okay.
When does it become?
When you vote, no, I'm not going to say, but right?
I want to hear that answer.
No. But it's thought is only a crime if someone. I don't believe that it is a crime. Not in the Torah. Thought is not a crime. If you want to do a sin and you don't do the sin, it doesn't count as if you've done it. But if you want to do a mitzvah and you don't do the mitzvah, it's considered as if you did. So thought could be used as a positive, meaning like this. Someone calls you up and asks you for a ride to go to get a ride to the doctor. You say, oh, sure, no problem. I'll give you a ride to the doctor. I have some time. I can take you. Okay. When do you need to be picked up? In 15 minutes. Okay. They call you back a few minutes later, and it's not, even if it's not so convenient, but you say, I'm going to do it. I want to get another mitzvah. Right? They call you back 5 minutes later and say, you know what, Eliza, thank you so much, but you know what? I have someone else who's going anyway. I don't want to schlep you out of your house. Thank you so much. It's okay. Did you get the reward for that mitzvah?
Yes.
Yes. You got the reward for that mitzvah, and you got the extra 2 hours that now you don't have to schlep and wait, right? So that's a special gift that Hashem gives you because you showed your desire and your willingness to do that mitzvah. So there, your thought and intention is counted as if you did it. Okay. But if you had a thought of intention to go rob a bank, but you didn't, it's not considered a sin.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Actually, I had something in response to what Leonard asked about talking between a husband and a wife. Can y'all hear me?
Just 1 second, Ed.
I just have to say, every time Oliver's in, or she's in a video, Oliver barks.
Oliver?
Yeah.
Say good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, Dawson.
Good night, Oliver. She sticks to what's important. All right, say good night, everybody. Good night, Scott. Good night, Eliza.
Leila Tov. Good night, Hadassah.
Good night, Abba's friends. You see everybody? Say bye-bye. Everyone's waving good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
To the other kids? Okay. All the other kids are in bed already. All the other kids are in bed already. Yeah, they're all going to sleep already. Okay, good night. Good night, Sugi, okay? Okay. All right, I'm sorry. This is part of the whole of the homeschooling challenge, right? Is to keep our children busy. But yeah, so I'm sorry, Ed. I'm sorry. I
Okay,
interrupted your
yeah.
question.
Yeah. In response to Leonard, as I was saying, at Partners in Torah, I'm currently studying the Chafetz Chaim's book on Lashon Hara, and this is what he has to say about talk between family members. Similarly, the prohibition of believing Lashon Hara applies regardless of whether one heard of Lashon Hara from other people or whether he heard it from his father, his mother, or other family members. A person should therefore make it his practice to consistently correct his family members in these matters.
Beautiful. You see that?
Yeah.
Look at that. We have a scholar in our midst here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Rabbi,
Yes, there's another question here.
can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah. So before we go about correcting our wife, how do you rank this Lashon Hara with Shalom Bayit?
Okay, so here's the thing: is that Shalom Bayit always takes precedence.
Okay.
Shalom Bayit, because if you don't have Shalom Bayit, if you don't have peace at home between a man and his wife and a woman and her husband, it makes everything more complicated. And so it's something that it's very challenging. There's no question it's challenging, but it's the reality of how this game is played. This game of Torah and mitzvos and life. It's a big challenge. There's nothing to talk about. And if that challenge is you know what? Hashem gives a special blessing when we do the right thing.
Rabbi,
Yes, David, I'm sorry.
that's all right. Here's a quick one for you. So you said you get mitzvahs if you and you think about doing a mitzvah and you say, I'm going to do this, what if you spend your whole life thinking about it and you don't do anything? When does it become false after that?
No, just thinking about it is not enough. It means you have to have an
I can always say, I'm going to go to synagogue today, but I never go. Do I get a merit for saying that?
You're right. No, but that's different. That's different. That's not what we're saying. That's not the same as you went on the highway, you're on your way to synagogue, and then there's a blockade on the road.
That's
There's
different.
an accident, God forbid, on the highway, and you can't. So you wanted to, but you couldn't. It's not the same as saying, yeah, I'm sitting at home, I'm going to watch the Met game, and I really would like to be in synagogue, ideally, but you know what, I'm not. And God understands my intention. That's not the same. All right.
You know me better than anybody.
But you're not a Met fan.
No.
Nobody here
I
reads
know.
Washington
That's
Mexican.
why I picked it to divert. Okay. So we see from here that a person is obligated to put the one seeking his advice on the track of the pure and clear truth. Returning to the exposition from Torah's Kohanim, from the Midrash on Leviticus that he cites above, Ramchal discusses the subtle nature of this prohibition. You can see that the Torah understood the underlying motives of swindlers. For in this prohibition, we are not dealing with fools. You're dealing with smart people. Who would offer, right? You're not talking about fools who would offer advice whose unsoundness is known to everyone and is readily apparent. But rather we're talking about the Torah is addressing people who are shrewd in doing harm to other people. Who give their fellow advice. That on its surface is truly of benefit to their friend. But ultimately will not be in his fellow's advantage. In the end of the story, it's not going to be to their advantage. Rather to his detriment and for the benefit of the advisor. So I'll give you an example. Al-Kain, 1 second, so we'll finish here. Al-Kain Amru, therefore, since the Torah is addressing such a crafty advisor, the sages said, Shema Eitza Yafa, lest you claim that you are really giving him sound advice. Veharei Hadava Masur Lalev, you should know that the matter is in the domain of the heart, and Hashem alone is aware of the true intentions, as the verse itself states, and you shall fear your God. Let me give you an example. So you're giving advice. You say, I've been a money manager for the past 30 years. People have only made money on me. I'm giving you sound advice. Trust me, right? They say that whenever someone says, trust me, immediately don't, okay? If someone were to tell you, trust me, I'm giving you sound advice. And right, what's for sure is they're going to get their commission fee, right? That they're going to get. You are also going to lose your money, right? But that you don't know, because it seems like it's sound advice, and they give you all of these news articles, and you see this and you see that, but they know that this is bad advice. So to them, it's beneficial because they get their commission, but to you, you're going to lose your investment, okay? And you're going to come to them after and be all upset, and they're going to be like, well, what can we do? The markets, coronavirus, the stock market crashed, and these are things that perhaps you may have known, or you have known that this product is not a good product, and you anyways gave this advice to that person. But despite the Torah's clear warnings, how often the people stumble with regard to these sins, yom yom, day after day, because they are summoned by and march to the powerful lust for profit. The severity of their punishment has already been clarified in scripture. Orur mashke iver badorach. Accursed is the one who causes a blind person to go astray on the road. So imagine someone comes to ask you for advice. Now, someone who comes to ask you for advice, you know what they really are? They're a blind person on a road. And they want to know, should I turn right or should I turn left? I don't know. Where should I go? All right? So in such a case is what the Torah is talking about. And the Torah is saying, you have to recognize when someone asks you for advice, right? You don't give advice based on what your benefit's going to be. You give advice of what is the best advice for that individual. Okay? What is the best advice for that individual who's asking you the question, right? And even if it's at your loss, even if you're not going to make a commission from it, you still have to give what's best advice for that person, because they are considered like a blind person. And when the Torah says that you should not put a stumbling block in front of a blind person, it's referring to this person who is blind regarding this matter. Okay, any questions? If you have any questions, on the bottom of your screen, there is, you can raise your hand over there. All right, any questions? Okay, I take that as a solid no right there. Okay. So now, Ramchal continues, and he says, having explained the severity of giving unsound advice, Ramchal describes the proper way to give advice. So what do you do now? Someone is coming to you. They are that blind person on the road. They want to know, do I make a right? Do I make a left? Right? Just by the way, okay, just an interesting thing. If you are, and this could be no benefit to you, and it could be just, playing a prank on someone, okay? Someone is running out of gas in their car, and they pull over, and they ask you, they say, sir, can you tell me where's the nearest gas station? And you know it's 2 blocks that way, but you tell them, I think it's a few blocks that way, the other way. And you're like, and then you go to your friends, and you'll have a good laugh on their expense, right? That's another example of don't put a stumbling block before the blind. Okay, and that's you can say that it's cruelty in a way, but it really could be. Okay, so now the Ramchal describes the proper way to give advice. By contrast, this is the obligation of an upright person. When someone comes to consult him, he says he must give him the exact same advice that he would have taken for himself. He can only give him advice that he would have given to himself or to your own child. Would you have given that advice to someone you love and care about? Right? Would you give it to yourself? And we know that we love ourselves more than we love anyone else in the world, right? Would we give that advice to ourselves? Without considering anything but the welfare of the one who consulted him. And the advice should not be based on any other objective. However probable or far-fetched it may be, and should it happen that he perceives something harmful to himself in that advice, which is best for his fellow, and would prefer that the fellow not follow that preferred course, then he has one of 2 choices. Okay, so imagine this. Someone comes to you and asks for advice, and you know that if you give the advice, you're going to be hurt by it. It means it's best for them, there's no question, but it's not best for you. Do you have to give that advice? So he says you have 2 options. If he is able to openly point out the harm to the one seeking advice and thereby prevail upon him not to follow that course of action, even though it would be better for him personally, right? Then by all means he should point it out to him. The imlav yistalik min hadavar v'lo yatzeu. Right? But if that is not a viable option, then he should withdraw from the matter and not advise him at all regarding this matter. Okay? So you understand that these are the 2 options, right? So you're not allowed to give bad advice to someone, right? And a person who comes to you and asks you for advice, your answer needs to be thinking about yourself in that situation, putting yourself in their shoes, what would be the best solution for you, right? If you were in their shoes. So you come up with the solution. And let's say that solution is A. But now you have a problem. That A is bad for you as an individual, right? So what do? So either you tell him A and tell him why it's going to harm you and could persuade them not to take that option, or keep yourself out of it and say, you know what, I'm too connected to this matter, and I can't give you objective opinion. Okay, because I'm right. It's going to. I'm a party in this matter, and I'm not and I'm prejudiced. Right, I have my own prejudice because I'm. It's like I give you an example. If you're an investor, a silent investor in a business. Okay, let's assume this. You're a silent investor in a business, and someone comes to you not knowing that you're a silent investor, and says to you, Tell me, what do you think about this? Have you heard about this company? Now, again, nobody knows that you're an investor, and you have every interest in this person investing in your company, right? Are you allowed to give advice when you may not know if it's a good piece of information for them? You don't know if it's good for them, right? It's good for you perhaps, but it may not be good for them, right? So what would be best and truthful is if you say, listen, it might be good for you, it might not be good for you, but I can't give you advice because I'm prejudiced, because I am related to this matter. You don't have to reveal that you're a silent investor, but you can say, listen, I have holdings in this company, or, even if they're silent or whatever it is, in whatever way you're allowed to share the information that you have. And I can't give you honest opinion. I'm prejudiced. Of course I want you to invest, right? But it's to my own interest, and I can't give you truthful, honest opinion. That's subjective, okay? So the Ramchal, what Ramchal is teaching us here of what it means to be a Torah Jew, and being completely transparent and honest, even if it will be against our own benefit, we have to be cautious. We have to be so cautious, never ever to give bad advice to someone, right? And this is all from one verse. Lifnei iver lo titen michshol. 5 words in the Torah, and there's books and books and books and books written on these 5 words in the Torah, and deriving from it not only those 5 words, but what's connected to it. I am Hashem your God. I see the intentions of your hearts, not only the words that you say. Okay, so it's a very important thing. And again, if you realize the Ramchal brilliantly established way in the beginning of this chapter that every single person desires money, and therefore sometimes we do even a little bit of a trick just to make that money. We'll shave off a little bit off the numbers, we'll play games. Ramchal is telling us how we have to be careful. Not now that we understand that every person has a desire for money, we may fall into a trap of doing something which is dishonest in order to reach that end. And Ramchal warns us about this, that we need to be extra cautious not to fall into that trap. Okay? So Ramchal therefore continues here. But in any event, he should not give him advice whose objective is anything other than the welfare of the one seeking the advice. The only exception to this is where the one seeking advice has evil intentions. For then, in such a case, it is a mitzvah to deceive him into accepting advice that will thwart his evil plans. Right? That is scripture in Psalms 18:27. He says, with the crooked act perversely. V'chushai ha'arki yochiach. And the story of Hushai the Archite proves this concept. Okay, any question here? David, any question? None. Anybody? All right, we're ready to move on. Bobby, any question? Okay, good. Okay, excellent. So, just quickly, the story that he refers to here, article on the bottom here on comment number 73 says the story of Hushai the Archite is related in Samuel 2, chapters 16-17. Avshalom, the son of David, rebelled against his father and gained the loyalty of his father's foremost advisor, Achitophel, who advised Avshalom to attack David as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Hushai, one of David's men, pretended to join forces with Avshalom. He convinced Avshalom that it would be a mistake to attack at that time. This allowed David to escape and eventually defeat Avshalom. So we see that where someone is trying to do evil, you can use trickery to thwart their efforts. Okay.
Would that be quick question? So I don't remember his last name. That the guy Eli, what's his name, who infiltrated Syria, got to the highest ranks there, and of course, was a spy there, and he was protecting
Cohen.
Eli Cohen. Yeah, I don't know why I forgot his last name.
Our man
Eli
of Damascus.
Right, or man of Damascus. I mean, is that it? Would that fall under what you're mentioning then? That he was deceiving for the sake of protecting Israel?
Absolutely. We see that we had spies in the time of the Torah. Moshe sent spies. He sent 12 spies into the land of Israel, right? Spying is an old Jewish trait, right? But it's when we don't spy on someone else's business, right? We don't spy on someone else's privacy. We spy on enemy territory, right? To know with what type of warfare we would face if we were to attack or be attacked, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, if you're interested in current events, so there were two amazing missions of the Mossad recently. They suddenly arrived in Israel with 300,000 test kits for COVID-19. And this is like 2 days into this whole recent thing. And they had no idea which country it even came from. But they said the Mossad arranged it, so we don't ask questions, right? The Mossad figured out. So they don't only use it to knock off enemy combatants, but they also use it to help protect and defend Israeli. The same thing happened with certain medications that they were saying. I think it's this the hydroxychloroquine that they came out with 1 million doses arrived in Israel miraculously one morning on an El Al plane. No idea from where, no idea how it got there, but the Mossad secured that. So that's a little bit of spy work, because you have many countries who might have stockpiles of that but wouldn't do open trade with Israel. So that's why you need people who are officially Swiss or French or other, and they land in Tel Aviv. All right, so yes, so next is Nikio. So that's cleanliness and being pristine in our ways when it comes to advice. What we spoke about, again, we spoke about hurtful speech. We spoke about cleanliness with regard to sexual relationships, for them to be how to not fall into a trap and be clean in those areas. We spoke about financial cleanliness, and this throughout this entire chapter, the Ramchal is going to go topic by topic, bringing up things that we can always brush off a little bit. A little bit of this, a little bit of that is okay. Just cut corners here, cut corners there. The Ramchal is saying, no, that's not the way the Torah wants us to act. The Torah wants us to be clean and pristine in all of our actions. Okay, and that's why the Ramchal, this is, I think, the longest chapter of the Ramchal in the entire book, where he goes through so many different examples, item by item, ensuring that we understand that it's not just a concept and an idea, but in practical ways that we need to be careful. Okay, the next is Rechilus and Lashon Hara. Anybody knows what Rechilus is? Rechilut, which is, I would say, gossip mongering, and Lashon Hara is gossip mongering, and Lashon Hara would be slander. All right, so I'll give you an example for Rechilut, and I'll give you an example for Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is, I go to Scott and I say, Scott, do you know what Dave did? And I tell you a whole story, okay? So that is Lashon Hara. I talk to you about someone else. Rechilut is very different. Rechilut is, I go to Scott and I say, Scott, do you know what Dave said about you? Okay, that's Rechilut. That's a gossip monger. That's someone who goes around saying negative things that someone else said about you. Right? So what happens now? Now you got your arms out because David has been going around saying negative things about you. Okay? Now, God forbid, David only says the nicest things in the world. Where are you, David? Oh, here you go.
Yeah, right.
Here you go. David only says the nicest things.
It's always David. You know, what about Ed?
Where's Ed? Where's Ed? I'll pick on
He's
Ed.
always
next.
sleeping
Okay, I'll
over
pick on Ed. Ed is all the
Yeah.
way out in the woodlands. He's out in the woodlands. Poor guy. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to pick on Ed.
David,
All right,
when
next
have
time
I
I'll
ever
pick
said
on Ed.
anything bad about anybody who you know?
What'd you say?
What's that?
When have I ever said anything bad about anybody? Who's
Yeah,
not,
that's right.
not a
Neither
politician?
did David. I'm just picking on him. Okay, so these are the two different types of negative speech. Lashon hara is very simple. Lashon hara is a very sadly a very common thing where just people talk negatively about other people, and that's if it's true. If it's not true, then that's motzi shemra. It's a third party. It's a third problem, right? And that's just outright lying, right? You saying things that are unsubstantiated, and you saying things that are not verified, and you don't know if it's right. So that's another thing. Okay, so harachilus ve'lashon hara, concerning rechilus and lashon hara, gossip mongering and disparaging speech, kvar chamro noda, the severity of this sin is already well known. V'godol enough of kirabu ma'od, as well as its extensive offshoots, which are so very many. Ad shekvar gozru omer chachamim zichron l'bracha, to the extent that the sages of blessed memory have in fact declared unequivocally in the Talmud, v'mamar shekvar askarti, in a statement that was already mentioned in chapter 10, v'kulam be'avak lashon hara, and all people stumble in the dust of lashon hara, in the dust of it. The Amru, and the sages said further, Heichi dami avak lashon hara, what is classified as the dust of lashon hara? Kigon, as an example, a person says, Heicha mishtakach nura ella be planya. Where can fire be found except in so and so's house? Oh, she yisaper tovaso lifnei, and that's referring to. So he says, the commentary over here says, there is always a fire burning in that house because they are always cooking, implying that so-and-so is gluttonous, right? Oh, they're always eating, right? So that's one way of saying, right? Oshi saper tovaso lifnei sonav. Or likewise, if a person relates someone's praise in the presence of his enemies. So if I were to go to Ed and say something to Ed about something, see, I can't use Ed as an example because Ed is such a nice guy. He doesn't have any enemies. But imagine Ed had an enemy. And if Ed had an enemy, I would say to him, Ed, do you know about Joe Schmo? You know, Joe Schmo's such a nice guy. Such a nice guy. I met him yesterday, and Ed's blood is boiling. He's like, what are you talking about? Do you know this guy is a cheat? This guy is a scoundrel. How can you ever talk positively about this guy, right? It's a known sin. You're not allowed to say nice things about someone to someone who hates them. If I know that you have a hatred for someone, I can't say something positive about them to you because that will only spark you say, oh yeah? Well, wait till you know them. I would recommend you hold your pockets very tight when you do business with them because, right? And it only brings out the worst of the response because it's you're sort of instigating them to say something negative about this person. The kol kayotze b'zeh, all similar examples of indirect negative speech. What's the problem? I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was say something nice about somebody. What's the problem? Well, you said something nice about somebody to someone who doesn't like them. So that's not nice anymore. That falls into the category of already, trying to like tickle their sore wound of like, right? And that's not going to be a positive outcome. Af al pi shenir dvarim kalin. Although these seem to be insignificant matters, far from actual gossip mongering or malicious speech, Hine be'emes mi'avak shalohem. They are, in fact, examples of its dust of Lashon Hara. Klalo shel davar. Here's the general rule. Ramchal simplifies this for us. And he says, Harbe dvarim layetzer. There are many ways for the evil inclination to entice a person to transgress. Aval kol davar sheyuchal lihivaled mimenu nezek ubizoyin lechaver. But anything that can result in damage or degradation to one's fellow, Bain b'fanav ben shelo b'fanav, whether it is spoken in his presence or not in his presence, hareze bichlal lashon hara. It falls into the category of lashon hara, which is a biblical prohibition. So let's understand like this: if a person talks about another person, whether it's good or bad, if it could come out to be a negative thing about that person, again, because if you say good about someone to someone who hates him, it's like saying bad against them, right? Or saying something which is indeed bad about someone, whether it's in front of them or not in front of them, it is part of this prohibition, the biblical prohibition of Lashon Hara.
You want some cake?
Hareze bichlal lashon hara. These fall into the category of lashon hara. Hasanui umetuav lifnei hamakom, which are despised and abominable before the Almighty. Shenemar she'amru olav, and about which the sages said, Kol hamisaper lashon hara ki'ilu kofer v'ikar. Anyone who speaks lashon hara is considered as if he has denied the fundamental principle of Hashem's existence. Ukroksiv, and there's a verse in scripture in Psalms 10:15 that says, Milashni basese re'ehu oso atzmis. He who slanders his neighbor in secret, him I will cut down. Meaning God himself intervenes and says, I will handle this individual who speaks secretly of negative about another person. Scott, you have a question?
Yeah, when you're talking about not bringing up somebody's name who you know will go in and end up invoking a feeling, what if because I know it's sometimes happened to me where someone is almost kind of, they've said, oh, do you know so and so, and you just respond to, yeah, I know so and so. Oh, I think they're a great person, but you don't know that they have ill will towards them, or you don't. So is there again an exception for that? It's one thing, again, I understand, to goad somebody who has issues, but are you sinning if you end up, or if you just volunteer just on your own to say, oh, I just ran into so and so at the grocery store, what a nice guy. And it turns out that the person you're saying to can't stand him. Have you violated a sin?
This is a classic example of how our sages say to be very cautious before talking about other people.
Even when you're praying, even when you're saying something nice about somebody.
Correct, because you might be talking to someone who just broke up with them, someone who just broke up a business deal with them, someone who was just cheated by them, and it can invoke the worst of responses. So you have to say, I know them, right? And not without offering that. Now, if you see that the person has a disdain for them, don't fuel the flame, right? If the person, you see that there is a positive response, they say, I happen to know them. I really like them. I think they're great. You can always praise a person, obviously. We're not saying not to praise people. Of course you should praise people, the positive, but not to their enemy. Right? Not to their enemy. If you know someone is an enemy of another person, you have to be very, very cautious before talking about them.
So somebody gets angry as a result of you just on your own, just saying, I just ran into so-and-so, and they were so nice to me, they did something nice, and just by bringing up that person's name, it ends up invoking, you have no idea. And
right.
it's happened to me, and I've seen the reaction, like and they do exactly what you're saying. It's like,
and it's like, whoa, I'm sorry. All I was saying was something nice about someone, right?
Right, exactly. It held the door for, when I was walking out with the, carrying a bunch of stuff. That's all, that's all we said there. So in that case, though, that's not, having said that, just in passing in the course of conversation, that's not that I understand about being careful, but I don't know how exacting sometimes this can be, because really your intention was
Pure.
pure.
Correct. Excellent. Any other questions? My dear friends, this is the last class that we will be giving before Pesach. I'm so sad because Pesach, even though I'm so excited for Pesach. I'm so excited for Pesach, but I'm going to miss seeing all of you in class on Thursday morning and at Partners in Torah Wednesday night and all the other classes. If you have time, anytime before the holiday, we have an amazing program that we put together last night, which is a basic training for how to run a Seder. I learned a tremendous amount myself.
It was phenomenal.
It does run a little bit long. Thank you, Eliza. It does run long. It was about 1 hour and 15 minutes, but it went through the entire Seder from top to bottom. We had 5 rabbis and many, many people on with us, and it really was an incredible learning experience, going through from the beginning to the end of the Haggadah, everything that you need to know. So I highly recommend, if you're planning to run a Seder this year for the first time, as many of us are, that you should watch that, take notes, because it really is a special program. Otherwise, if you are not yet subscribed to our new Torch Minutes channel on Instagram, please go to @TorchMinute. It is a phenomenal new avenue of spreading Torah. We are growing in our with our followership, and it's also expanding in other areas such as our WhatsApp groups. So we want to encourage everyone to participate, share it with your friends, and keep on growing and learning. Have a very blessed Pesach, everyone. I look forward to seeing all of you soon, speedily, in our days with Mashiach, in our Jerusalem that will be rebuilt, and hopefully out of this isolation and public distancing, all in good health. Amen.
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 Any other questions?
Amen.